should have said. You heard Dr. Gary Gordon mention, among many other things, something extremely appropriate to the next speaker. And the next topic is the one that's on your yellow sheets on the right-hand side, and it's listed under Parasites, the silent killer. You know, enormous amounts of information tell us that an enormous number of people have parasites. That's why you should be so careful about the person sitting next to you. You're going to hear more about that right now. For the first time at Global Sciences Congress, I'm proud to introduce Wayne Rowland of Olympia, Washington. Bring him on with our Global Science welcome, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Wayne Rowland. I was born on an Indian reserve in North Dakota. My young life was part of being brought up by a shaman and his wife, and they were my mother and father, my second mother and father. And I learned at a very young age to travel with him to what's called God's banquet table to get potions to fix up the natives, potions to do things for health. And I worked with that gentleman as my young age, and I always, when I found out how I could get there, and there is a specific thing that you do, it's a physical thing that you do to be able to get there. And when I got there, I never was able to find him. And when I'd come back, I'd always ask him, you know, why can't I find you there? And he would just smile. He would never tell me. And then one day, when I got there, I decided I didn't want potions anymore. I wanted information. I wanted information that had nothing to do with potions. And I was kind of perturbed about the fact that I always had to ask about potions and people's health. And that was the day I learned that a God-man figure always goes to God's banquet table alone, and always goes to the marketplace alone. So the independence that I learned that day was very important, because as I went through life, I found out, because there was no school in our area at the time, my education was memorizing 3 volumes of an 1840s engineering encyclopedia. And when I didn't understand a word, I had to look it up and write out the meaning and get back to the encyclopedia. And as a result, my head today is full of archaic engineering principles. Which, by the way, occasionally I'm finding out they're hailing as new ideas today. One of the devices is a free power device that has to do with getting air pressure out of water. If anybody wants that device after this meeting's over, I'll be in the back there. I'd be glad to share it with them. I always wanted to be an engineer, never could be. So one day, I had a bit of money, and there was an engineering firm for sale, and I bought it. And with a suit and a pair of shoes, and the place came with 2 engineers and staff, I looked like an engineer, so I became an engineer. It was during this time that, by the way, we built a government building. And it was during this time that I was doing a contract for a pipe company, and a young apprentice, we were having trouble with the shaft, a very long shaft with threads on it, and we needed to move the shaft, so I was making lead hammers. Out of molten lead, you pour into a mold, you stick a pipe in it, and you've got a nice big heavy hammer, and you can hit the threads with it so you won't damage the shaft. And we were in the process of making these hammers, and I had protective gear on and a helmet and earplugs and eye guards, and a young apprentice threw a cup of coffee into the molten lead pot. That changed my life forever. The explosion picked me up and embedded me into a wall. I had third-degree burns over 15% of my body and second-degree burns over the rest of it. I lost my hair. I was bald for 3 years. What saved my eyesight were the goggles, and my hearing was saved. The little plugs I had in my ear melted all the way into my ear, almost to my eardrum, until the lead cooled down enough to stop burning. My problem is that thousands and thousands and thousands of little balls of lead formed from the steam of lead cooling down in my flesh. So I became one of the most horrific lead poison patients that they'd ever seen, and my liver started to fail, and I was deemed a terminal patient. And a young man came to see me, and this young man had stolen $4,000 from me in my firm. And I had him in a position of trust, and it really upset me, so I just fired him. I didn't want him around. It just really upset me. And while I was laying in bed in the hospital, he came in to see me. And he said to me, you know, I'm really sorry about stealing that money from you, but I kind of heard you were in a real bad situation, and you know, I'll never make anything out of myself, and I'd like to know if you could see your way clear to sort of leave me a couple $100,000 of that money you've got nothing to do with. I must admit, I thought about it. When you're in that position, you know, things sort of run off you easily. And I looked at him, and then he said to me, by the way, he said, you know, I know a priest. I said, you do? He said, yeah. And he said he specializes in getting rid of lead poisoning. I said, really? Where is he? Oh, California. Well, now, I'm from up north, and we all know what's down in California, right? And I looked at him, and then I thought, well, the Vatican has to send somebody that's normal down there to help balance the place. So I said, well, what's this guy's number? And he said, well, I have it here, but he said, listen, he said, don't tell him that I gave it to you, and don't mention my name. I said, I see. All right, I won't mention your name. And he gave me, he gave me a man's name by the name of Ray Schmidt, who was a Catholic priest and who had been crippled by prayer. He wanted to take the world's problems onto his own shoulders, and God gave him his wish. And when he realized that he'd kind of overstated his case, he found a way to freeze dry a clean algae out of Klamath Lake. And I called him and told him my story, and he broke down on the phone and wept. That really shook me up. You know, men don't do this. And he sent me a box of green stuff the very next day with a pilot. The pilot walked into the hospital room with it and said, here it is, give Ray a call. So I did. But first I opened the box, and it stank like the bad end of a pig pen. And it was bright green. And the note said, whatever you do, don't eat any of this until you give me a call. And I thought, well, no joke. So I called him. And I said, where did you get this? I said, this stuff is really from a pig pen, isn't it? And he said to me, no. He said, Wayne, I want to tell you something. He said, God sends little tiny packages out to the world all the time. And if you don't grab a hold of it and use it and understand where it comes from, you missed the boat. I said, oh, really? I said, you're going to want me to eat this, aren't you? He said, well, he said, first I want you to make a batch of it up in a pot and put it on your burns. And you'll be able to stop using drugs for pain. And he said, I want you, if you can't swallow it and keep it down, I want you to just put it in your mouth and suck on it. He said, it will clean your liver, and you will survive. Now, I had a little money, and I was sharing a room in the hospital, and I couldn't find a pot to mix it in except this round pot you sit on. So I cleaned that up really well. And I put the stuff in the pot and mixed it up, and it smelled bad, and my neighbor looked at me and said, well, that stuff certainly is in the right place, isn't it? And I looked at him and I said, look, I can't reach around the back and I'm really burned and I need some help. And he said, I can't do that. He said, they'll throw me out of here. I said, I won't tell them that you helped. Well, it really helped, I tell you. He did help me, and I was sitting there with a big patty of it on my head, and the lines were running down my face, and I had it all over my body, and things were pretty severe looking, and the nurse walked in. And she never said a word. Not one word. And she walked back out, hello. Well, that's the day that they put me into this club called To Die with Dignity. They had figured the lead poisoning had passed the brain barrier. They came into the room, all these young men and older men with their white coats on, and I assured them that I had not gone right over the deep end. They wanted to know where I got the stuff first. I said, from a Catholic priest. I figured that had some weight. And so they said, well, you can't do this here. And I said, well, yes, I can, and I'll buy the bed. I'll pay the cash for the bed that I'm ruining, and I'll just sit here green like this and see if this works, because you told me that I'm terminal and you can't help me. 15 days later, I walked out of that place after a 15-day war. The psychiatrist that helped me, or tried to, would talk to me like, well, now we all know that death is just an extension of life. And I said, well, that's fine, you die, I'll live. They gave me up as an incorrigible something or other, and 15 days later I walked out of the hospital. I had my color back, it was no longer yellow. And that got me onto the road of health. I moved to California. Everybody thought I was crazy anyway. The sores wouldn't heal, they would bleed, and I became known as the bleeding man. The kids used to point at me and start throwing things at me and then run. When I shopped, the store finally stopped me from shopping and said they would deliver the groceries. So that went on for a while, and finally when I got the bleeding under control and the other things happening in my life, I moved to California. And there, I developed stomach and esophagus cancer from the lead poisoning. Oh my God. And things weren't working well. I was eating more algae than I ever knew existed. I was trying a dozen different things. I developed arthritis, and I had to have help to get out of bed in the morning. I went to Mexico and I found a way to handle the arthritis, but this growing ball in my stomach was getting worse and worse. And I really didn't want to go in anywhere and have them even look at it, but finally it got so bad that I did go in, and they just looked at it, took their pictures, and fed me this ugly stuff that makes you glow inside. It's probably radioactive or something. By then I hardly cared, and the doctor told me what he was going to do, and he said, well, there's good news and there's bad news. He said, what do you want to hear first? I said, well, give me the bad news. Let's do that, and then you can give me the good news last, and I'll feel a little better. He said, all right. He said, number one, we have to remove your stomach and esophagus. But he said, the good news is that if you survive the operation and survive the chemotherapy, we'll put a tube in, and you use a blender to now as your stomach. They'll grind up all your food, and people that do that seem to live longer. I said, well, the good news? He said, well, that's the good news. I said, well, what's chemotherapy? And he looked at me, and without batting an eye, instantly he said, it's FDA approved. Now that just wasn't the right thing to say to me. I mean, he's an MD, he's not going to use anything that isn't. So I tried to get out of him what chemotherapy truly was. He wouldn't tell me, so I wanted to see it. I demanded to see it, because you see, being a youngster on an Indian reserve going to God's banquet table, I learned to see color coming out of people. I see the color around your body. It's beautiful. It's really quite grand. And I wanted to see this stuff. I wanted to see that if it was a color maybe that would match mine. And when I saw the bag, it looked terrible. And I turned the bag around. I didn't turn it around, the attendant turned it around, and there was a red skull and crossbones on the back of the bag, and the statement said, under no circumstances, even when this bag is empty, must it be cut open, death can ensue. And I said, well, you mean you're going to pump all this stuff into me, and then what's left will kill you? And I said, you know, I said, the address here is Missouri. I said, I'm going to Missouri. I walked out, walked right down, spent the $1,000 for a ticket to Missouri and back, went to Missouri, and they wouldn't let me in the chemotherapy plant. I had to hire an attorney. There was a lot of kerfuffle. I finally got in. It cost me quite a bit of money to get into that plant. They were very nice. I got a full, complete rundown on chemotherapy. I have the chemical makeup of chemotherapy. They gave it to me. And I walked out with my attorney. It was all done and said. We left, and guess what? I was no further ahead because I'm not a chemist. I don't know what this chemical breakdown is. So I went to a compounding pharmacy knowing that they had a chemist in staff. And the man looked at it, and he looked at me and frowned and said, well, this is part of the war division, the chemical department of the armed forces. I said, really? He said, yes. Well, it's right here in Missouri as well. Why don't you just go over there and ask them if this is what I think it is, mustard gas? At that moment, I wish I hadn't done have at that time any other choice. And it kind of really bothered me that I had been so stubborn, and I'd have gone ahead and done this, and now I found out that we're going to pump mustard gas into my body, and they told me I was going to die if I didn't do this. And by the time I found out the truth, that the only thing that was in it was water, they'd mixed it up or something, and it was mustard gas poisoning, all right. And I flew. So I was going to put a full-page ad in the paper, but on the third page in San Diego, it's pretty expensive. So I ended up with a small ad, and it read, my name is Wayne Rowland. I'm just like you. I have heard that there's a cure for disease that's been suppressed. I have cancer. I'm not going to accept the modality of the day. I need to know if there's a cure that's suppressed out there, and I offer a $10,000 reward. Now, I'm in California, right? What do you suppose happened? I had to hire 8 people to man the phones in 2 shifts. I had to get 8 phones in. But one man called me. One man. And he impressed me. And he said, there's not one cure for cancer that's been suppressed, there's been 5. Which one do you want to know about? I said, whatever one works. He sent me to somebody that had an original Rife Ray unit, and I used it. 3 months later, the cancer was gone. So was my arthritis. And I was so gung-ho on it that I decided that I had to get involved in building Rife machines and get it out there for people and really help them. So I started doing research into the Rife technologies, and I found another man who really knew quite a bit about Rife and had all the frequencies and everything, and I went to see him and paid him a little bit of money, and he became a friend of mine. His name is John Sajeka, and John Sajeka showed me that I wasn't using the Hertz rates to get rid of cancer at all. And that upset me, because I paid good money for this. Now, and why did the cancer leave? And I looked at the Hertz rates that I was using, and lo and behold, there were Hertz rates to get rid of worms and parasites. It turned out that the lead poisoning was giving a bed for parasites to breed in furiously, and it was their waste that had given me cancer. I was absolutely in shock. And the more research I did and the further I got into this, the more I found out that pretty much all disease is caused by worms and parasites. And so I stopped building Rife equipment and selling it, and I wanted to find out what we could do about the worm and parasite issue, and lo and behold, by then, by the way, I had loads of Tesla equipment. I even bought some original Tesla equipment out of New York City. You see, when I give my workshop tomorrow, what I'm going to teach you is how to go to God's banquet table to get information. I'm going to teach you a physical method of how to create and bring something back right in reality so that you can get out of life what you want. That's what I'm going to teach in my workshop tomorrow. I'm going to teach you the physical things that you can actually do to manifest into reality anything that you want and bring it to you literally. For that's what I do. I bring people, I bring information, schematics, I bring anything that I want. And as a result, that's how I found the Tesla equipment, the original Tesla equipment in New York City in a basement that had been there for 48 years. That's how I got into all of the stuff I'm into with Hertz rates and manufacturing lightning. And so I wanted to know, was there a method of finding a way to put these Hertz rates into water? I needed it. So I went to a medical library in Seattle, and lo and behold, I'm walking down the aisle and a book fell out and hit me on the head, almost knocked me out, and I fell down and it opened up, and there was a machine that manufactured lightning to manufacture colloidal silver with lightning, patented in the 1850s. I was amazed. Now it failed because they wanted to make colloidal silver for photographing and things like that, and it had failed because they couldn't make it powerful enough, but it certainly looked to me like it was going to be powerful enough to do the job I wanted to do. And since then, we've found a way not to make colloidal silver for your health, because I don't agree with putting parts per million of 10 parts per million into a body. There's too many long-term adverse effects that have been talked about, and as well, they talk about a 40% failure rate in colloidal silver. The doctors that were using it the day claimed that at one time it would work, another time it wouldn't work at all. So what we wanted to do was find out some way to make it work all the time. And the way you do that is the Earth is off its axis, is no longer vibrating its very special notes that keep you healthy. And those notes are the chord to B flat. And so we learned to control the Hertz rate of a bolt of lightning, and we created 3 bolts with 3 different notes. Those bolts of lightning strike an absolute pure plate of silver in a huge Pyrex ball that is the inside an electrical storm. There's clouds in it, barometer readings, and we create lightning in there with controlled Hertz rates to boil molecules on the surface of the bar, and the rain hits the boiling molecules and did the same thing that the lead did when it exploded and caused my problem. And so they explode into the rain, into solution, in very minute amounts of 0.047 parts per million. But the charge around the molecule of silver is so severe and vibrating at the Hertz rate of a B-flat note that now the silver starts to broadcast that music through the water. As a result of this, we've taken third-degree burn patients who've lost a third of an ear, had all the skin melted off their noses with only the cartilage sticking through, and third-degree burns all over. At 0.047 parts per million, They just spray it on, and in 6 weeks, the ear grows back without a scar to the total size that it is. So does the nose, so does all the flesh. I've done children, and I'm now doing a group of individuals. I finally got a group of individuals that have lost, one man lost all the flesh on his wrist and his hand and has lost the use of his hand completely. He will spray the solution that I have built him on that hand, and he will regrow back not only the muscle tissue, all the nerves will grow back, and so will all the flesh without scarring. And for those people that have scarring from old burns, I built a salve so that they could put the salve on, and we're having fantastic news about that as well. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to create a substance that would help the deworming process. Now here's the problem. We go to Safeway and we buy vegetables, right? Or we go to our garden and get vegetables. Well, thousands and thousands of eggs, parasite eggs, float in the soil and the water in the soil, and the roots from the plants suck them up into the leaves. And they wait for an animal such as a cow to come along and graze it off. The problem is that you fence the place and you go grazing. Now those eggs are not supposed to hatch in your body. Nature has seen to that. They're supposed to pass right through. But you buy salad dressing. Now when they make salad dressing, they've got this huge stainless steel vat, and it makes 1 million bottles of ranch. And when they're finished with that, they want to make honey mustard. So they clean the machine out with what's called food-grade propalcohol. And when they're in a hurry like that, they don't get in there with rags and wipe it up. They just pour in the new ingredients and mix it up, and you're consuming what's called propalcohol. So we take a Petri dish and we grind up lettuce from Safeway or whoever, or Vaughn's or wherever who's selling it, or the health food market down there with organic vegetables. We grind it up and we put a swab on it on a Petri dish and pour in a little bit of salad dressing from one of the food stores and put it in a Petri dish oven. And in the morning, all the flukes have hatched by the hundreds. So what you're doing at body temperature is you're hatching flukes by the thousands every single day you eat salads and all this other stuff. And they get into your bloodstream. Now you have T cells, an immune system, and they see these critters and their war starts. And some of them, they just need to find a place of safety. For some reason, your pancreas gathers up wood alcohol. You know, when you were a child and you had a high temperature, your mother bathed you in wood alcohol to cool you down. Well, you absorbed enough of it and your pancreas picked it up and stored it for you to save you from the disaster. A fluke or two finds their way in there, and they grow up and they have babies and they start making a mess. They have feces, you know. Now we all know about feces, don't we? A big cow does it on the ground and it gets hard, and we pry it up and we go join a contest and earn $50 to see who can throw the organic frisbee the farthest, right? And when we dig it up, we see all these little critters in the feces. Well, the flukes that are living in your pancreas, the feces there collect single-celled organisms called viruses. Their waste shuts the pancreas down, and you've got diabetes. I have a standing offer for any diabetic. I have a 100% money-back warranty. You buy 10 cases of my water and do a deworming package that we not put together. We have done research on a whole bunch of groups of people that have done deworming packages. We have selected 2, only 2 out of all of them. And in these 2 packages that we've selected, if you do one of those packages and you do that water and you do not lose your diabetes in 3 months, you get all your money back, even though I do not sell the deworming package. People shooting 45 units of insulin per day, 5 fast-acting units in the morning. They've lost their jobs, gangrene in their toes, and they're going blind. Have completely recovered in 3 months. Those people have not used any insulin now for 1.5 years. I've got children that have come down with diabetes at a very early age. It knocks their diabetes out. So we have a money-back warranty on this program, so that if you have a child with diabetes, you can get rid of it. And now breast tumors. Breast tumors, it seems now, are just about as easy to get rid of as a common cold. It's caused by parasites. And so your thymus gets full of parasites. And here you have your thymus now, it's not operating properly, and the thyroid, it doesn't operate properly. That affects the acid in your stomach. The strength of the acid in your stomach starts to shut down. And what do? You get mold off a fruit growing there, and you wind up with candida. There's an 1800s remedy. It's called Lugol's iodine. For those that are not allergic to iodine, if you can eat shellfish, shrimp, or the sort, you buy yourself a little bit of Lugol's iodine, knocks candida out just about overnight. Certainly will in 3 days. You take 6 drops, 3 times a day for 3 days. The mold and the fungus and all that nonsense growing in your stomach and all that candida growing there knocks it out flat. It's only $8. L-U-G-O-L-S, and a lady over there, I believe, somewhere selling it today. At least I think I saw some over there. And then we get to leukemia and we get to lupus. Terminal patients with that problem. A small deworming and this magic water with a vibratory rate in it, and lupus and leukemia fall by the wayside as well in 3 months. Leukemia and lupus, it knocks out. Just whacks it. And this goes on and it goes on, yes. And the deworming. You have to deworm. It's the worms that are causing the lupus and leukemia. We now are getting about an 80% success rate with all cases of MS. And I got an MD who has an herb for those real serious cases of MS that puts them into a state of paralysis. After they've dewormed and they've done some water and things and got their bodies operating decently, he paralyzes them with this herb for 8 hours. They have to lay there paralyzed. And the strange thing is the main trunk lines stay paralyzed the longest, and the brain doesn't like that. So what it does is it finds other ways to get around down to the feet, and the people get out of wheelchairs and walk in a day. And that's going on. And this just goes on. And these are MDs that are helping me out, and these are other scientists that are helping me out, and we're creating some of the most incredible things that are happening. I do not sell any of the deworming programs because I don't want to be part of the absolute cure of this thing or anything, because I don't cure anything. All I do is support and help. And for some reason the body's immune system comes alive, and voila. Now look, folks, I'm 58 years old. I was heavily wrinkled. I was bald. I was in a wheelchair for a while with my arthritis, and I had stomach and esophagus cancer, and I have developed an age regression program. You know, as we all eat these vitamins and all do these wonderful things and these machines and everything to lose weight and whatever else we're doing, we come to what's called a wall. And no matter what we eat, no matter what we do, no matter how we do it, somehow we can't get past that wall. And we just keep getting older. Well, we found a way to get over the wall. That program will be available in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks. We've done all the tests. It works. We can pull every one of you back 15 to 20 years. Absolute. Somebody over there likes that. Now, the people that know me and that have seen me this year have all looked at me and watched me, and I'm getting younger. So you see, I'm first. It's my program, I'm first. And you know, I think we all really need to find a way to get to God's banquet table. And I think we really need to find a way to make that new car happen, to make that farm happen, to make that money happen. Do some of you realize that, you know, for some reason, everything was working beautifully for a while, and then all of a sudden everything stopped, and you just went broke? Well, there's a reason. There's a specific, absolute reason why that happens. And it's really easy to overcome that. I mean, about a 2-hour session with me overcomes that and allows you to manifest grandly again anything you want. My goodness, folks, I do it all the time. The people around me are always just standing looking at me saying, how did we do this? It's really easy. So I'm going to, for the very first time, teach this in a workshop. Okay? So if any of you want to learn that, it's tomorrow morning, I think, at 8:30. Wouldn't you know it? Early. When we're all bright and bushy-tailed, right? Right. Some people are finding out that a little bit of Lugol's iodine turn them around completely, pull them out of depression and pull them out of the feeling that they have of suppressed feelings. They just can't seem to make the grade. And you know, part of the drive to my equipment, John Sajak is taking to a university to straighten up the last etches of this equipment so that we don't have to use such massive stuff. And now we can do anything with the water. We can make worm water, we can make laughing water, where you can drink with the laughing water and you laugh hysterically for hours. I unknowingly made a batch and took it to one of these meetings and thought, well, I'll give a little to the first row. They disrupted the entire meeting. I didn't even get anything said. They just laughed hysterically at everything I said. And you know, it's so wonderful to laugh like that. The next day you realize that, gee whiz, you know, I should do something about my health so that I can laugh a little easier, so I can have a little more fun in life. And you know, I mean, I laugh a lot. I have a good time. We have a joyous time. And we get this water out to you as cheap as we possibly can. And it is far more than anything that you'll ever use. A lady here in Chicago had this man-eating flesh disease that devours you in 3 days. I sent her overnight a case. She just sprayed it on and drank the whole case. And then the next morning, she said she never urinated so much in her life, but it was gone. You see, it's single-celled. And they can't handle the music. So we're starting to wind down on our time, I think, aren't we? We've got, what, about 10 minutes left? I'm going to field some questions here. Does anybody have anything to ask? Yes?
I wanted to know if you have anything that's effective against emphysema.
Emphysema, strangely, he wants to know if is anything that can help with emphysema. Emphysema and what's the other one with emphysema that you need a... Asthma, yes, asthma. Yeah, we found out that, believe it or not, there are translucent white worms about 4 inches long living in the lungs. I know how to get them out, but unfortunately they have to come out your mouth. That's unfortunate. I can't kill them because it causes too much trouble, but we found a way to get them out. For things like that, what I'm rather interested in, 4 things like that, where you can sit and give yourself a little bit of treatment, I kind of like the Bob Beck machine. It's showing up as having some promise here for that. If you've got a problem in life that is really serious and you need to get a handle on it, and it's things like emphysema, lungworms and things, the Bob Beck machine seems to be doing something for that. So I'm really interested in that. If it does work, I'll certainly let you all know, and I've got to try it a little more. Yes?
What paves the way to susceptibility to worms? Can you repeat the question?
What paves the way to being susceptible to worms? You eat. Now look, you got a doggy in the house, right? And he licks his little bum, right? And then he's got a coarse tongue, and he puts thousands of fluke eggs into that coarse tongue. And then he comes along and licks your hand. And he deposits those little tiny eggs in the cracks of your fingers of your hand, and you don't realize it. And during the day, you go like this because your nose is itchy, and you've just sucked down a bunch of fluke eggs off your doggy's rump. Now, that's just the bottom line here. No one is resistant to worms and parasites. And look at the 1800s. We go through the 1800s. What did the doctors do then? They dewormed you. And the best man I like in America is Dr. Chase out of Chicago. He wrote 3 books. You can get them in the library in the old book section. Dr. Chase. In the center of his book, he's got a whole bunch of remedies for deworming. And you know what? He kept records. I love it. And here's what he stated. For some strange reason, after 40 years of practice, I have asked everybody how often they deworm, and the people that deworm every year never come in for anything. They come in for checkups. They're healthy. And the people that never deworm, except for 2 or 3 years down the road, need some doctoring. And the people that never deworm, well, we're starting a new clinic for them because they have this strange new disease called cancer. And Dr. Chase got an 80% success rate right in Chicago in the 1800s of getting rid of cancer by deworming. And look what we've done. Yes? Allergies are caused primarily by problems in the gut, and all you need to do is clean them up, and I have a program for that. I even have tested out some of the companies that have put together programs that I consider to be really good, and you can get a copy of that. And the folks that have my water and things like that are packing it will help you out there. And you just go to those companies and buy the stuff, or go to your health food stores and get it. I try and show you the best products to use. Okay? Yes, in the back. The age regression program really does not involve that much. It involves first, deworming is first, then an intestinal cleanse. And you got to do it from 1 or 2 different companies. They're the only 2 companies I know that do a good enough job. Now, if you're really messed up, you're going to have to include a few colonics in that, but you don't really have to. You can sort of get away from that if you're a bit woozy about that. But the point is after that, we have a little package. And you just do the package over a 3-month period and pull your age back. It works. It's worked on every case. It's certainly working on me. Yes?
What's the package?
The package has 3rd-year cow colostrum in it. It has certain types of colloidal minerals in it. And there's a couple of other proprietary things in it. And we're putting the package together, and it's not going to be an arm and a leg either. Yes? We're working on that right now. 4th level paraplegics that are in wheelchairs that can't move. There's a doctor in the 1920s that came up with a substance that regrows spinal columns. And we're working to revive that right now. And we're hoping to put a clinic together high in the mountains in Wyoming. And I'm working with a group of people to that now. So we're going to try soon a dozen wheelchair cases. Okay? Stroke. We don't have any data on stroke right now, but I do understand there are some doctors that do. We have no data on stroke at this moment. Yes? How was what? Oh, I don't have one. There's a couple people here that carry my products and a bunch of others. One is right over there where it says Silver Rainwater. You see a big pile of it piled on the table. Over there, those folks have got some salve and stuff. There's some people in the back there that are also carrying it. Yes? Is there any laughing gas available? Honey, no. I don't think there's any laughing gas at this place. And I don't bring any laughing water with me. Oh, yeah, high blood pressure. Listen, folks, my blood pressure was 170 over 140. That's almost death. And my people down in California told me, said, Wayne, if you don't get this lead poisoning under control, and if you don't get your high blood pressure under control, you're going to kill a busload of kids because you're doing all this good work, and that's the pendulum swing. So get down here and let's get you some help. I dewormed 4 times in 1 year. On the 4th deworming, I started to feel really good. And when I got down to California, they took my blood pressure. It was 120 over 84. It dropped in about 2 days. Yes? How about brain what? We're not having much luck there. You need colloidal minerals and things like that, but I'm not having any luck with brain damage after accidents. Yes, in the back. Perfect. 100% success rate in getting rid of all depression, manic depression. That's literally worms and parasites, and so are migraine headaches. A depressed migraine headache case just recently, she had lost her job with the Canadian Broadcasting Association. She was making $120,000 a year, I believe. And she had to sit for about a week and a half in a dark room in the basement and keep perfectly still because of her pain and the fact that she was so terribly depressed. Just the water and a small deworming pulled her out of that in less than 5 days. And she's now getting her job back and all this stuff because she's healed. She dewormed and she drank, I think, 8 cases of my water. And that absolutely knocked it out. Yes?
How do you know how much of the water?
Well, there's so little of anything in it except music that you can drink any amount you want. It's considered by the FDA as common drinking water. They also believe it's a wonderful placebo. And they're a little upset with me. They said they don't have a problem with my water, they have a problem with Wayne Rowland. That's the way they stated it. Yes? Oh, I've heard about Crohn's disease so often, and I've never had anybody that tried the program for it. So if they did, they haven't gotten back to me. I don't know. Okay? Yes? Oh, that's a joke. Listen to this. You know, I always believed that Alzheimer's was caused by aluminum in the brain eating the neurotransmitters out. Is that not correct? That's what we all believe? Well, a woman that was doing my water, and I'd really helped her in her health, said to me, my mother's having a good day, and I want to go over and get her, and I want you to talk to her. She has Alzheimer's, and my heart sort of sank. I thought, oh, what am I going to do with this? She's got aluminum in the brain, and it's eating out all her neurotransmitters. So she brought her over, and she held my hand, and she was talking to me, and she said, you know, I would really like to know if there's something that can be done because I've got so much to do in this earth. She said, and now I've got money. She said, I've gone through 3 husbands, and I have a bit of cash. And I thought, well, the old girl isn't that bad off. She can remember that. And then she looked at me and said, do I know you? And I said, no, honey, you don't know me. Well, we did a deworming program with her and fed her this magic water. And you know that her daughter went to Europe for 2 months, and she ran her daughter's business while she left. It took only 2.5 months to get her over her Alzheimer's, which proves that the aluminum in the brain, which is there, is not eating out the neurotransmitters. It's the organisms, the bugs and the parasites that need the aluminum's vibration to go into a breeding frenzy. And it's their waste that's eating out the neurotransmitters. And as long as they're there, the brain won't kick in any extras because there's 10 sets of all of them. And lo and behold, oh, by the way, a huge building came up behind where we live. I didn't know what it was, but it sure went up in a hurry, and it turns out to be the Alzheimer's clinic for Washington. So I've put in a bid, and I've underbid Culligan for the water containers for drinking water. Yes. Pardon me? Oh, iron overload. You're going to have to do a chelation, I think, for that one. There's some Russian chelation kicking around that's out here that's really, really good. You might look into that. We only got 5 minutes left. Yes? What? Oh, yes, I can tell you all about arthritis and how to get rid of it. I'll be outside. You can talk to me out there. There's a little story to that. Yes? Oh, that boat. Yeah, there was some folks, they got into a freak storm off of the Miami coast. They were flipped upside down and spent 11 hours in the ocean right where the septic system pours out of Miami. They came down with some kind of strange disease that ate their bones from the inside out. And she snapped her back while she was doing dishes. They wound up in full body casts, flat on their back. They could not urinate to get up to go. They couldn't go to the potty. They couldn't do anything. They were dying. They were introduced to this music water of mine, and I sort of made some special music water for them. And they're both now back to work. And when her back snapped again, a second time, they tried to operate and put a pin in her vertebrae. And the vertebrae crumbled. So they had to vacuum clean it out, and one of her vertebrae were missing. So they put a body cast on her and put the support into the cast. And when she was up and doing her things, they found out they were getting better. And so what they did is they told her she must come in to have that pin put in, because her back would collapse and she would destroy her spine. So she went in to have an x-ray, and lo and behold, her body had regrown that vertebrae completely. Now, I'm not taking credit for that. I don't know what happened to this water and why that happened, but there's something going on, right? Someone's pointing up here to God's place, and that's probably what it was. Yes? It will be available, I believe, in 2 weeks from the folks that are selling the water. You need to get a hold of them and talk to them, and they'll know all about it. It will be available in 2 weeks. Yes? Yes, also, yeah, there's no problem there. You need to deworm and do some water, and we have another program for that. And you just follow the program as it's set out, and it works just fine. Yes? Who? I don't know. Oh, I have no idea. Absolutely none. I can't help you on that. But I will tell you quickly about a youngster that had terminal psoriasis. I have a tape out, and he's on that tape. He had absolute terminal psoriasis, and the government was trying to take him away from the parents because they said they would not do what was medically best for him. And they had started a court action to get him out of get them out of the home. And I did a reading for this youngster, and I told him that he had incredible parasites in the small intestine and a blockage. We put him on my water and on a small intestinal cleanse with a parasite cleanup program, and the day they walked into court to have the child taken away from him, he was already back in school and completely well. So we've got him on tape. Oh yeah, there's a sheet here, and they'll tell you all about the maintenance program and things. Yes? We haven't had any luck with Parkinson's disease because I haven't had anybody to try it. Well, that would be just fine. I will talk to you, and we'll create some kind of a program for you that will be no cost to give it a try. Yes? Seizures, I can't help you out there at all. Yes? Talk to the people that handle my stuff, and if you've got a problem, no matter where I am on the planet, I usually give you a call. All right? Yes? Yes. Yeah, muscular dystrophy. Yeah, we're having some success with that. Right, he needs to deworm now. Really. Okay? Time is up, folks. We're done.
Are you in the next room?
No. Well, yeah, I'm there over there and in the next room, and somebody else in here is doing it.
Well, if you're going somewhere now, first you ought to go on the other side, because there'll be a bunch follow you, and then later. Wayne will appear at several places, but one of them will be over here. Now, we're going to have a drawing. Thank you, sir. Diane Mora here is giving away